All right, cool. Welcome to the show. Join with me is Rob from Liquid Gold. Check out his channel. Today we're meeting up to talk everything about NFTs, where we think things are going. Rob, do you want to give a quick intro to yourself?
Yeah, thanks, man. Hey, Mark. So my name's Rob Blasetti. I've been running Liquid Gold Crypto News for about a month and a half now. I do a crypto news show updating the world with everything that's going on in crypto. It's a global news show, so it covers everywhere around the world. And yeah, we're here today to talk about NFTs and the rise of NFTs and what's gone on over the last year and a half. And looking forward to a chat, man.
Yeah, awesome to have you here, man. So I think NFTs has been around for 18 months. I think, my first uh, I guess, look into it was, there was these Axie Infinity, and there was like some hash mask and the Bored Apes, but I didn't think much of it, right? And Crypto Punks. I'm curious to know what your when you first heard about NFTs, and what was like sort of your progression over the last 18 months, and what that kind of looked like in terms of first finding out about it to actually seeing if there's something there, the potential, and then where we are today.
Yeah, man. So I think I first heard of this kind of technology quite a few years back. I've been in crypto for a good 8 years, and NFTs I think first came about as a colored coins project on Counterparty, which is a project built on Bitcoin. And when that happened, that was like, all right, colored coins were these things where you could kind of label or brand like a particular like a Bitcoin on the Bitcoin network and make it, uniquely different. And that was like the first kind of like NFT like thing that came out of the space. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't really think much about it back then, but definitely more recently when it's been implemented on Ethereum as like formal NFTs, seeing
Yeah.
the Bored Apes, the Crypto Punks. I was like, I'm more curious from a point of view of like socially, it's interesting that we're doing this now. Like people are coming up with these collections, and people want to buy them and hold them as like strange little images. And where's that going to go?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I think like um, COVID's got a like would have had a part in this too. So the fact that this was all happening when a lot of people were spending time, at home online, and like collectibles and like Pokemon cards and even shoes and cars and that sort of thing all popped off during this period. So I think people were in that sort of mindset. It was like kind of like the perfect storm. Maybe it wouldn't have as much traction in a different time, but I think it kind of just kind of converged into that point. Where do you? I mean, let's start more recently. Like, where do you think? What's the most prominent NFT project that's in your mind, or use case, or something you've seen, recently that stands out in your mind?
Yeah, what sticks out to me, I think it's really interesting where this stuff really integrates with social culture. And I think seeing like the Nike set of crypto kicks was really cool because that was when I saw, oh, this can be something that crosses the bounds of like it's not just an internet collectible thing for geeks and nerds on the internet that enjoy collecting things. It's actually going to start to cross into sporting, right? And like people that are doing exercise and the way that guys socialize a little bit. And I thought about it and I was like, once we start representing these things in the real world through like, VR and AR and stuff, it's going to start to like cross over really strongly and turn into a new thing. And that's what really fascinated me about it. I was just like, man, this is not just, a bunch of collectibles online. This is like going to start to merge with real world stuff very soon. And I think the reason
Yeah,
for that was that you could see that there's like value and wealth behind these things. Like they're not just, collectibles, they're actually like worth a lot of money. And when you put
yeah,
money in it, I think that's where it starts to become social, where it's like, oh shit, these things are worth millions. That's
yeah.
people can get on board with that.
Yeah, I think it's super fascinating, especially when you've got like Nike, Adidas, like big names. They kind of legitimize, new technology because the big brands behind it.
Yeah.
It's You're obviously passionate about it. Can you tell us a bit more about like what Nike has actually done there, and where do you think what are the implications? Where do you think that's going to go?
Yeah, sure. So earlier this year, I think it was, Nike bought a startup company called Artifact, and they were the ones that came up with the original kind of virtual sneakers that were sold as NFT collections. And then Artifact, after the partnership, they put out the Crypto Kicks, which was the actual Nike branded sneakers. They were full on like, video game style. You could like trick them out with like different attributes and colors and things. Like really like gamifying virtual sneakers, but in a way
Yeah,
that is like, like authentic and real, that you'd want to hold them. And I was
yeah,
just like, oh, that's pretty damn cool. So I think that's
yeah,
kind of how I followed that project. And then I saw that the same thing was happening with like luxury brands like Louis Vuitton, and what was Givenchy, I think it was. There's a few of
Prada.
them that, and
Yeah,
Prada, they're doing these like NFT collections of like really, like these
yeah,
like expensive NFT collections. And I'm like, hey, where is this going? Where are we? I think this has got some real world connection here.
yeah. What do you think is the relationship between, like, obviously, up to a certain point it was all digital, right? And then we started looking at special option brands. Where did you see the relationship between like the digital and like the physical products, and like when did you start to sort of see that sort of blend? Like,
That's a great question, man. I think, you know what, when I start to see the like socialites taking it on board, and like people who are in the music industry and artists, when you start to see them taking it and being like, oh, maybe we'll use this. Like, there's a few like, hip hop artists and rappers and like socialites from America that took on Bored Apes and put them on their profiles on Twitter. And like when you see that, that's like, all right, these are the people that kind of create culture from the start. And when they're willing to take a chance and be like, oh, let's use this, all of a sudden you've got like a new kind of pattern
mm,
that other people, that trickles down to other people eventually. Um, and granted, more recently as
yeah,
the market's been down, like they've stopped doing it so much, but it's like it's not really important. What's important was that it kind of took off from nothing and it became like something.
yeah,
And I think that, as the bull market comes back and as we go on these like cycles of crypto, like that shows us where we're going with this, of
mm,
like it's going to trickle into mainstream culture. So yeah, I think it's the socialites and the kind of like social leaders that kind of take this stuff and do something unique and new and make it cool, which is a weird formula.
mm. Yeah, I agree, and I think like these people who have like a lot of influence and culturally, and like just and all, like a big audience as well. Um, you saw Steph Curry like with the Bored Apes. That was like kind of like the first wow, some like NBA guy that's probably not never interested in this stuff has kind of gotten into crypto. And then there was Snoop Dogg like kind of jumped in, and like he was really big into crypto. He's always in collaboration with, and like a ton of people like Kim K and like a bunch of people got into it. So I thought that was interesting. Um, like coming back to Nike, I saw a video where it was like a Nike meetup or an event, and they had like a hoodie. There was a QR code, and if you had the app, you could see this guy was like dripped in like epic. He had these wings and whatever like coming out of the back of his hoodie, which you wouldn't normally be able to see. Like we've seen examples of that on AR. We haven't
Yeah.
seen like, NFTs and then merch, and then like kind of looking at those, exploring those use cases. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Like where this stuff starts to branch into like the new tech, like AR, and where it's going is like it's purely up to the creative imagination to think about this. It reminds me of like all this stuff we're talking about with the metaverse and how it's like, all right, this
Yeah,
whole metaverse space is like this weird, undefined new space where it's like how it's hard to comprehend even like what is going on. We're building this new thing that's kind of like a virtual space that exists in the real world and kind of blends and lines over there.
yeah,
It's pretty fascinating. Like when you just talked about this idea of like, wings coming out of someone, it's like, okay, that could be an AR effect that comes from owning an NFT, video gamifying life in this like weird way, which is fun, right? It's like, it's a fun thing to do.
yeah. I think like there are some brands and some people that can pull off like really out there like fashion, like sneakers and stuff. But for the most part, I think some people are probably more comfortable with like regular looking sneakers, but with like an attachment where, like, hey, if you're using an app, you're into that space, you're in that niche. you look at those shoes and they're actually something completely different when you look at them digitally. I
Yeah.
think that's kind of like that concept's kind of cool. And you know, you're spot on. Like all of this has come like sort of converged, right? You've got um, VR, which kind of like we thought was going to be massive, and it kind of just like lost
Yeah,
interest and
died.
like
Yeah.
faded off a bit, like 3D glasses. But and I think talking about metaverse, probably dig a little deeper there. There's Mark Zuckerberg who sort of came into that picture, so we can't talk about the metaverse without talking about like Zucks. Like what's sort of your take on like Facebook, coming into the space, sort of maybe 9 months in and coming in like sort of announcing to all shareholders like, hey, we're making a pivot, and this the share price has been tanking, and they're saying like they're not making money, but he's like if someone in his position and a large like FANG company of pulling something off and taking this risk, this is a pretty big deal, right? Like Amazon and the likes, although they dabble in a lot of things, they usually only make up a small percentage of what they're investing in it. Mark Zucks is like going, I'm gonna fucking like put in a huge investment into this. It might not pay off. So
Yeah. Yeah, man, they've poured like tens of billions into it over a couple of years. Like it's a crazy amount of investment for something that is a very long-term vision that very few people can kind of grasp right now. Definitely not shareholders. I think the way that he's kind of discussed it with shareholders is like, yeah, this thing is coming, but like doesn't look anything like social media the way that it's been in the past. So it kind of looks like a big cash sinkhole. Having said that, yeah, definitely, I think the metaverse is coming. This
yeah.
idea of like a virtual space that everyone wants to partake in. But I think there's a great argument to be made that it's going to be more like a public utility rather than like a company built thing. And maybe it's possible that we go down that route first because we're more comfortable with the kind of walled garden experience, like with Apple and like Samsung and the way that they kind of build their walled garden environments. But I think in the long term,
Yeah.
like the open internet, intranets kind of became a thing of the past, and we went to the open internet. And I think in the longer term, we'll
Yeah.
go to just the open metaverse. There'll be this kind of like integration with, just the way that life is with the virtual stuff. Um, but like maybe in the short term, we take the route of like, all right, let's have the companies do it first, and maybe Facebook's in the position to do that. But kind of seems like they've tanked in the meantime, like building it. They've kind of really dipped like 70% or something over this.
Mm. Well, like he, like Mark Zuckerberg was pretty committed to VR already, so I think like they'd kind of sunk quite a bit of money into that.
Yeah.
They kind of that probably made sense for him. Um, what do you like with NFTs, with metaverse? What do you think about sort of like the economics behind it? Right, I think Gary Vee sort of mentioned quite early on huge implications. This is going to change the way we see the world, and that sort of shift from Web 2 to Web 3. But also, a ton of people are going to lose money. 99% of projects are going to go down. I feel like he's statement there's way too much supply compared to demand. That's the reason why it's going to happen. Like, what are your thoughts on sort of like that aspect of it?
Yeah, it's fascinating, man. It's to me, this is definitely like an economic paradigm shift. Like we're going from consumer economy of like buying goods and services to what seems more like a kind of network effect of like communal groups taking part in something together. Like if you notice with an NFT set, it's like you can have this kind of exponential effect where you own something and someone else owns a part of it and someone else owns another part of it. And because we're in it together, there's something to be gained as being a part of something together. You don't really have that with like the consumer
Mm,
economy. We have like a strongly individualistic, buy and sell goods and services. And yeah, I think there's definitely more of a communal aspect behind the idea of NFTs, joint access, like closed systems that you take part in together voluntarily. And wealth will kind of be generated out of that, I think, out of the fact that people want to be a part of this.
yeah.
So maybe the economics of it is like, okay, so what's the formula of what makes one successful? Why do you want to be a part of the Bored Apes Yacht Club and not I don't know, the dogs and kittens club, whatever. If somebody makes a
Yeah, yeah.
set, what makes it one successful over another? There's got to be some kind of like social element there. And I think there's a strongly tied in economic interest into the social element of these things now. So yeah, definitely like new paradigm, right? This is totally new. Like how do we establish what's
Yeah.
valuable and what's not? And I think more than not, it's not like a rational process. Like the discussion is nice and we can have that, but it needs to just play itself out in the social culture. Like, the Bored Apes, like it just kind of came out of nowhere and all of a sudden people started experimenting and doing a thing. It's very much like an instinctual thing. I'm just like, this works. All
Mm,
right, we'll go down that path. Um,
mm.
yeah.
I think like uh, with uh, DeFi, there was like I sort of saw it as like a ton of like mini experiments happening and like sort of a race to see use cases, but it was a tad like a little bit boring for the creative minded or like the average person, and I think NFTs is the same sort of thing. It's playing out like you said. Um, you know, over time, a lot of artists are having that aha moment where they're like, you know, this has changed my life, and I'm seeing like the conversations on like Discord and like in the like little NFT groups and stuff. It's empowered a ton of people, a lot of like musicians, artists, any kind of creativity, and like I think like you said, it'll play out, but it'll probably take a little bit of time, and we're seeing the
Sorry, video's been cut off. Just a
oh,
sec.
yeah.
Sorry, cut off in the last about 10 seconds. Just
Oh yeah. So I
yeah.
was yeah, so as I was saying, it'll be sort of interesting to see whether these artists will stick around and whether they're staying true to this. Like, I'm interested in this. I'll do it regardless of if there will be money to be made or not.
Yeah.
Especially when there was, we've gone through that period of easy money. It's sort of done.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I think so, man. I think, and there's definitely a an arc of like, all right, look, we tried, the early adoption came in. Maybe that was the last wave, right? It was like we just tried this stuff experimentally new and it's died down. Everyone's taken their NFTs off their Twitter profiles, the handles are going, and then all right, maybe give
yeah,
it 6 months or a year and it'll come back in a different form. It'll be like more advanced and more people will jump on that wouldn't have before. I feel like these things come in waves, right? Like what
yeah,
crypto is today, a couple of years ago, it definitely was not, right? The 2020 boom, it was like this institutional level, government level boom of like there were things happening on like companies buying Bitcoin, governments buying Bitcoin that wasn't happening, 4 or 5 years ago. It was just not happening at all. And it tends to just have
yeah.
these bigger and bigger waves, but it also has these die downs and troughs as well that you've got to just be like, all right, that's okay. It's not linear.
Yeah, it ebbs and flows, but with anything that's sort of um, on the cutting edge, on the sort of on the fringes of technology, I think it's kind of expected.
Yeah.
Let's kind of talk about let's maybe talk about like what from your perspective, what do you feel like is kind of missing from NFTs at the moment, which will sort of get us to that, sort of, um, that sort of wider adoption or sort of get more people that are skeptical about it to get them on board. What do you feel like's missing at the moment?
Yeah, I feel like to branch out to a larger audience, there definitely needs to be more of a concrete element to when these things start to tie into like the material world and away from the digital world. Because there's different kinds of people, right? And I think the majority or that there's kind of a mainstream cohort of people that until this touches the day to day, it's just not going to be relevant. And that's fine. That's just like, all right, we're up to the cutting edge right now and the early adopters. And to branch into regular kind of day-to-day people who are more into the physical and the concrete, we need to use this kind of technology that we have, VR and AR, to make it more accessible. But then even VR and AR hasn't come that far yet, right? So maybe it's just a
Yeah,
matter of like, all right, it takes time. It's going to be a bit of time, but the integrations that we've had this year of social media networks like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, I think even Snapchat, integrating, profile pictures and buy and sell and minting, which is coming as well. I think that's going to be a big boon for it because once you can mint your NFT on Instagram, without any technical know-how, oh, that's going to be huge, right? Because like you can make money off your pictures that you've been posting for years, and you know, if you're an influencer, you can sell it to your fans. Like, I think that'll give
Yeah.
rise to a whole new kind of economy. I was trying the other day, I was trying to mint an NFT just using my phone, and I'm like, this is not easy to do right now. Like, you have to get OpenSea, and then you have to link it with MetaMask, and you have to have crypto on your MetaMask, and then you have to use it to mint it. And I'm like, this is a lot of steps. A non-technical person could not do this. It's just not plausible. But once you have it, you know, minting, buying, and selling on Instagram, oh, that's gonna be huge.
Yeah. There's, like what I noticed this time around, even though you need all the technical knowledge, people who were interested enough and got on board, even if they hadn't been part of crypto, prior to it, they found out, right? And like, it's not often you sort of like sort of, sending that money, setting up a MetaMask wallet, and then you could have a digit wrong and just send it to the wrong, sort of just look like your money could just like sort of disappear if you make like one thing wrong, and like you don't have no reprimand. You can't go to the bank and be like, hey, I typed in the wrong digit. A minute has passed. You can't reverse that transaction. Like
Yeah.
once you've clicked that button. So um, and you make a good point. Like, although we've seen integrations where once you do set up the MetaMask, you can kind of log onto websites and it automatically connects, and it's quite easy, right? It's not like the Web 2 to Web 3 logins, and you kind of see like the sort of memes around that, where it's kind of like, now it's kind of one click. It's getting easier. It's like Amazon's one click checkout. Um, what do you think? Like you raised an interesting point on board, right? So for getting, that getting the next cohort of people onboarded, um, I think we do have to make it easier. We do need to kind of like use like the Apple way of doing things to kind of how do we make this seamless for someone starting who's interested in something, and actually get them to create a wallet, create buy some Ethereum, and then transact and own their NFTs. So, yeah, super interesting. Look, I think we've covered a lot. It's been really interesting. To wrap things up, like I think maybe you can kind of share. Like, is there anything else that you want to share about NFTs that's sort of like front of mind at the moment, or you think people should look into? Any alpha you want to provide to the audience?
Yeah, I got the good alpha on my channel. I made a philosophy video on the metaverse recently where I talked about NFTs and what's going on and how it's going to integrate in the metaverse. So that one's a good one to check out. My credentials and my experience, I've been in this for like, quite a while, 7 or 8 years. So I got a lot of thoughts about crypto and NFTs. So yeah, check out the channel. There's good content there, and thanks for interviewing, man. This is it's a good chat.
Good to have you here. So for the benefit of people listening, if they're looking for you, this video will be on YouTube on your channel. Where else can people find you, or is that the main place that you would direct people to?
Yeah, it's the main place. I'm also on Twitter, just kind of yelling at people here and there, and putting my content out on Twitter as well. So Liquid Gold Crypto on Twitter, and Liquid Gold Crypto on YouTube.
All right, awesome. If you guys are watching this, make sure you share it around if you think there'll be value that you can share with your friends.